So the market was pretty mixed today, but we saw that most of the quantum stocks on our quantum watch list actually did pretty well. So a good start to the week for quantum. I'd like to take a look at 3 quantum stocks specifically: D-Wave, QBTS, IonQ, and I'd also like to look at Rigetti. So we're going to look at the price analysis for these 3 stocks. Also, we saw that Tom Lee went on CNBC today and said he thinks we're at the start of a bull market, not in the middle, not at the end of, but at the start of a new bull market. So we're going to listen to that for just a second. We're going to look at our total watch list, and we're going to get this done as quickly as possible because I know you guys got other things to do. So let's jump right in.
Very shaky because that would have been, expectation.
On the S&P, a couple of months away from where we are right now, and we're already there. So you're raising your targets overall?
Yes, I think, when at the April lows, we thought we could make a move back to 5,500.
Right, we're at 5,900 on the S&P.
That's right. But our full year target was 6,600. So I think that's still a reasonable expectation.
You never changed that.
We haven't changed it.
Never did. Even on April, week of April 2nd or 7th or 2nd, you didn't change it.
No, it felt very shaky because that would have been, a couple 1,000-point move needed. But now that I look at 2026, I think businesses are in better shape now than they were in February. So I think making 6,600 actually seems more achievable today than it did in February.
And you think a bull market started April 7th, or a new bull market started April 7th? In everything because the NASDAQ already, if you just use 20% to measure what is an actual bull market, people think we need a broader indicator, a broader reason to call something a bull. But at this point, I think the S&P is also in a bull market.
Yeah, I think that the waterfall decline into the April lows was such a reset of sentiment. People talked about Armageddon, and we saw some of the most rapid deleveraging of hedge funds ever, and a collapse in investor sentiment, and a huge change in positioning. So those are, I think, things that look like what happens in a bear market. And the ISM has never broken above 50 in a sustained way. Market tops usually need an ISM to stay above 50 for a period of time. So I think we're at the start of a bull market. And as I look at 2026, I think housing could actually be a big lever to pull next year.
So that's a good sign from Tom Lee that he's calling for essentially the start of a new bull market and a reset on consumer sentiment. And it does look like we've already come a long way. And some of these tech stocks like NVIDIA and Google still, to me, seem quite undervalued based on the amount of money they have and the strength of their business pillars. So it does seem like there's still potentially a lot of growth ahead for the stock market. Let's take a look at the performance of the major indices today. So we see that the S&P started red with a flush and then ended up almost 0.5%. The Dow was also flushing in the morning and just eked out green, and the NASDAQ had a strong day, ending 0.67% up. As we look at our quantum watch list, we see that Quantum Emotion had a pretty nice day, but this is still a pretty dangerous and volatile penny stock. I have opened a position, but I'm not recommending that others open a position unless they have very high risk tolerance. We see that QBTS, even though it was down for quite a bit of the trading day, actually had a really nice intraday rally and ended up 4.78%. We see even IBM and NVIDIA. So we see IBM and NVIDIA also had nice gains. Rigetti had a little bump. LAES had a little bump. So down the quantum watch list, the only sell-off we really saw was Google and a little bit of sell-off on Skywater. So our stock heat map today, pretty mixed. We see that many stocks traded flat or didn't really move very much. And we've been seeing more of these mixed days and flat days. But we see that there's definitely buyers that stepped in for Meta and NVIDIA. Costco had good earnings. We're going to start with IonQ, and we're going to cover 3 quantum stocks today. So we know that IonQ has, since this really incredible rally that it had starting on the 22nd of May, we can see that in that one day, it did this 40% rally. It's given up a little bit of that rally. So there was some selling pressure that came in last week, and we saw that IonQ had a tough time holding above this 44 number. We have a little bit of price history there, but then we gap down, and it looks like IonQ has found some support at $39 and $40, that there's a lot of buyers sitting right here. The last time that IonQ, if we go back 1 year in this zone, if you will, so this channel, let's say this price range between 40 and 48, the next thing it did was it went and it made its all-time high. So are we preparing, or is IonQ preparing to retest its all-time high? And since we closed today at 40 and we're looking at a key support here around this $40, what we could see in a bullish case is we go up at this 48 and retest and potentially try to retest that all-time high, maybe as soon as this week if tech and sentiment remains positive in quantum and the wider market, and if there is no larger event. In a bearish scenario, there's a lot of price history here between 30 and 37. So before, as we kind of just do an informal rising support there, we can see that there was a rally going for a long time before this explosion. And then this rally and then this drop here, which kind of filled the gap a little bit. It kind of reminds me of the historic day we had in the market where all the stocks went up, the whole market went up 10% in April. And then when we saw like this sell-off down about 50%, and then it went up from there. In fact, just to get a little nerdy, I'll go and show you that exact spot that this happened. So if I told you we were looking at IonQ's chart, you would probably believe me, because IonQ had a similar candle, and then the whole Q's flushed down and gave back about 50% before ultimately in the last 3 months making a very nice rally. So if we look back at IonQ, we can see that perhaps we're in a similar spot with IonQ, where there's been that mega rally and the sentiment was super positive. It overextended itself. Let's take a look at the RSI. So we're also even oversold at this point on IonQ, which is healthy for the stock and could lend itself to potential upside. If we turn on extended trading hours, we can see there was quite a bit of volatility in QBTS, and it had a little rally going into market open, and then a spike, and then some really, really heavy sell-off, like a kind of almost a scary candle and wick there at 1513. But then there was this just unwavering rally from about this 1546 up to 1715. So now we're looking at 30-minute candles, and what we can see is we're starting to build some nice price history between 15 and 17. So it does appear that there's a good level of support at 15, and this is also a gap where the stock gapped up over from 13 to 15. So if the stock was to move down, 15 does seem to be a support going forward. After earnings to close today, we can kind of draw this blue line, and as we can see, we're holding pretty clearly above this rising support, and the stock is trading in a pretty overextended way. We are starting to get into an overbought in the MACD. Let's look at volume. One concern for the stock and one caution that I still have for the stock is that we are losing volume. So we had a lot of volume in our major rallies, and as you can see, volume is starting to peter off. So there hasn't been any catalyst or major news. There's still quite a bit of volume on the ticker. So if we look at QBTS, we can see that there's 62.5 million. As by comparison, the volume on NVIDIA was 194 million. So still being traded a lot, and that's good news. It just isn't at the volume it was during these initial rallies. The price action looks like it's wanting to build a base of support between these two channels, the price range of 15 to about $18. So it does appear that the bullish uptrend is still intact for our QBTS ticker. We know that our all-time high is right around here at 1979. So what we could see is potentially, if we can get through this $18 level, we could see a potential retest of an all-time high in a bull case. In a bear case, we could see it come down and break through its rising support and come down to about this 15 level where it seems to have quite a bit. And in an ultra bear case, it would fill this gap here and move down through its rising support and come down to the spot pre its move. So previously for Rigetti, we've drawn this blue line, which indicates a rising support, and the ticker ended just 1% up. So it's still hanging out really close to its rising support. And we can see that more clearly if we look at longer duration candles. So if we're looking at 4-hour candles, we can see that we've had some really beautiful bullish 4-hour candles on this rally. And the question is, are we going to get another one that sends it through this 1460 resistance and gets Rigetti back into where it can test potentially its all-time highs? Currently, the bullish trend is intact, although it is close to its rising support and it could break the trend and move down. So what we would want to watch out for, we could see a head and shoulders forming on Rigetti as well if this continues to chop and move down a little bit. So so far through this rally for Rigetti, there's been a lot of really beautiful bounces off the rising support. If the trend is to continue, if Rigetti is a creature of habit, the setup looks nice in a bullish way. If we're to move down, I think we would see support around 11. I think we definitely see support at 10. So I think there's a couple spots for Rigetti to catch itself. And I think a lot of buyers would step in at those levels. Currently, Rigetti is getting a volume about 30 million, so about half of D-Wave, but still a solid amount of volume. It's being traded a lot. So let's keep our eye on Rigetti. All right, so we've just done 3 stocks. We've looked at market news. We've done a reactive with Tom Lee, and we've done this all in about 15 minutes. If you enjoy content like this, please consider leaving a like or subscribe. Have a great day.